but he's big on the science, and he's doing a lot of research and like signaling, different brain waves and what brain waves are you getting into and what's it doing at this point and that stuff. And, ultimately the question is like, does that matter? Does the science matter? Do we really need to know the science to progress? Is science important? Is the evidence important? And like, for me, I say no, it's not. Like, I don't need that to know. Like, I don't care necessarily what my body's doing at any point. Like, it's more about how I'm feeling. Because that's ultimately what really matters. Is like, how are we feeling? What are we doing? Like, in the moment. I don't need to know that a certain hormone is getting released at this point, or if I'm trying to meditate, I don't need to know exactly what brainwave I'm in. It's just what's going on. Like, essentially, what am I feeling? What are my emotions? Like, that's what matters. So, question to me. So the question is like, what are your thoughts on science? Like, is research really that important? Like, do we need this much research? Because I also think that people put too much into research. Well, this study says this, and this study says this, and this says this, and that's the way it is, and that this is going to help that. But like, what they don't understand is also that's on, or maybe they do understand it, I don't know, but that's on a sample size, which is never 7 billion people, which means it never includes everyone on Earth. And you can sway those results in many different ways. And if 95% to be statistically significant, like, well, if you do 1,000 people and it's 95% statistically significant, well, if you put that over 1 million people, that 5% can become the 95%. And like, it doesn't really matter. So it's like, what's the point in all of that? And studies are usually done in very controlled environments. Like, if you're looking at biology stuff and like cells and like cancer research and things like that, it's done in a petri dish. That's not how we live our lives. If you're looking at physical therapy stuff, it's like, well, we're going to measure hip extension strength with just this one exercise and see what it does. But that's not how we live life. That's not what we do. We do other exercises as well. So how is this stuff really affecting us? It doesn't really matter. It's like, well, that okay, well, I'll continue using that in this, So it doesn't all relate to everyone, and I think a lot of people don't realize that or don't care, and I feel like they should care.
Use evidence. Well, I guess there's a couple of things, but like, ultimately the strongest thing is personal experience that anyone's going to have. And, the institution that seeks out evidence for things is because we need to be able to communicate our own experiences to other people. We need to, Joe Dispenza doesn't need any convincing that his back got better. But, if you tell someone else that story, they're going to be like, yeah, but like, what actually happened and how did this work? And so science as an institution is kind of, and I mean it as an institution, not as like a practice, but it is communicating. It's the act of communicating with other people. And I think the loudest voice will always be personal experience before that.
Yeah.
In light of that, though, like, communicating with other people, evidence, and basically just anything empirical and measurable, I think it's taken the forefront in our world because it allows us to establish like systems around it. Like, you are a doctor, and the reason that people will come to you for aid is because of that certification, because they could just as easily come to me. But the only reason they wouldn't, they would need to have some sort of personal experience to make them do that. You know what I mean? Like, if I was hurt, I would seek out a physical therapist before anybody else. So, so in that way, I think in a quest to make the world safer, we lean very heavily on things that can be sort of repeatable and empirical.
I think it's so important what you said about science as an institution being just at best a communication device. At best being a way to draw a bridge between different. Did that spark what you're thinking?
Yeah.
You can go first because I have some others.
Well, like, I mean, it's just that science is really just our way to, like, Joe Dispenza actually says this, like, science is the contemporary language of mysticism. Like, it's our way to try to describe what we don't understand in the world. Like, that's all it is. So it's still limited by our own minds.
Yeah.
And by, like, that limit, I'm sure you're going to get into that, James. But go to someone and because they're a doctor, whether a medical doctor, dentist, a chiropractor, a physical therapist, a PhD, or whatever, and just assume that they know what they're talking about or that they're going to be able to help you. Like, question them. If they get annoyed that you're questioning them because they feel like they're an authority, find someone else.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if they say they're the best or someone says they're the best? Who's saying they're the best? Why are they the best? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, question all of that stuff. Like, you shouldn't just be like, well, they're a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy, so they're going to be able to help me. No, I might not be able to help you because we might not connect on the same level. We might not hit the same things. So
Most people don't see it that
find
way. Most
someone
people,
else.
Most people don't even know that doctors disagree on things. Like, people, oh, you're a doctor, you went to doctor school, then I'm
I mean, all that, like, you get, like, I got a doctorate degree when I graduated grad school. Like, that, okay, so I could pass some tests. Yeah, I had to do some clinical affiliations and things and work with patients and learn all that stuff, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually a good physical therapist.
A lot of other people did that too.
Yeah,
You
and
probably wouldn't.
No, that I wouldn't go to.
Yeah,
No, and the same thing with physicians. Like just because they pass tests and they can do certain things, it doesn't mean that they're, or even if they're up with the research or going to conferences or doing whatever, like, it's still just their opinion. It doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. You don't have to go with it. It goes back to a podcast from a couple of times ago. You have the choice. You have all these choices. Like, question it, figure out what's good for you.
If someone's willing to question a doctor, then that means they have to be willing to question the institution of medicine practice that they've come to trust as some sort of god in their life that knows what pill they need. There's a lot of fear behind saying, like, what if my doctor doesn't know what's best for me? That's a very fearful thought for people who have put a lot of faith in that system.
Yeah, like, you know, like you said, like there's the part where you can mistrust the doctor, and then there's the other part where you know, the institution that gathers empirical evidence, that sifts through it, that is also ran by humans and is thus equally subject to conjecture in that kind of way. So it's important to have that type of awareness.
Context.
But I think also, like, you know, the nature of questioning your doctor, like, I think we could walk that out more, because, like, I think a lot of people think about this in theory. They know about it in theory, but in practice, it's just not a thing, you know, because how I don't know anything seemingly about whatever ailment I might have. And, like, I know that I'm supposed to question my doctor, but, like,
I'm more scared.
Am I going to just get kind of gaslit
Well,
by that
who's
doctor?
to say that they know?
Right.
Who's to say that they're up on that or understand what you're going through? Like, do they know the difference between the foods that you're eating and the different things? Like, do they ask you those questions?
Right.
Do they ask you, like, well, what are your daily activities? Like, what are the things you do every day? Like, how is that affecting you? Where do you live? Like, what are you taking in a daily
Prepared
basis?
to hear their answer to those questions.
No, I think
to answer
most
them.
people probably aren't,
Yeah.
you know, and they don't necessarily want to hear it.
Dude,
But
well, finish first.
But it comes back to, like, a doctor being an authority. Like, the doctors were an authority, like, when, like, I don't know, like, hundreds of years ago, when they were, like, the only person who was, quote unquote, educated in a village. And so people would go to them for advice and for things like that, not just medicine. So it's like, but everything's changed now. Like, we're all, like, we're not all educated, but we all have access to a ton of education, whether it's through an institution or not. And you can learn so much. That's not saying, like, go on WebMD and diagnose yourself and treat yourself. Like, you can find an understanding of some things and do it. That's also, like, you know, it can be annoying when someone comes in and is like, oh, well, I have this going on. And you're like, no, that's not really what you have going on. Don't try to diagnose yourself, but try to understand what you have going on. Like if a doctor tells you something is going on, like learn more about it, ask questions about it, understand it before you decide what you're going to do. That doesn't mean that like you shouldn't take their advice or like always get another opinion. Always like just learn as much as you can. That's what we mean by questioning it. It's not saying that the doctor is wrong. They might be, they might not be, but it's more for understanding for yourself, so that you can make your best decision because it's your life. It's not their life.
Are you in there doing whatever they tell you because you need someone to tell you what to do, or are you really trying to understand what's going on with yourself and do everything you possibly can to bring yourself into a place of feeling better? And we are like, this topic is so much deeper than it seems, because you're talking about how your beliefs, you know, as far as doctor, as far as science, as far your beliefs about these things are completely contingent on your beliefs about your place in reality, and whether or not you are magnanimous or whether you are separate and small and fragile, and whether or not you need some sort of authority to tell you more than you know. You know, I mean, beyond just getting more information on something, whether you need someone to a separate thing to give you validation, or whether you have more of an understanding of what your place in all of this is. And I'm losing my train of thought, but it's coming.
Yeah, again, it comes back to, I think, the narrative. So on the subject of, you know, how valid is empirical evidence, it's like, it's about as valid as empirical evidence is in any other aspect of your life. And the answer is like, most things are not, I guess, empirical about the things that you do.
No, I think most things are actually, like, most things are very subjective. Like, it's just subjective. Like, it's, if you come to me and like, I'm for pain in your knee, like, it's just gonna be my opinion on how you can make it better, and then you can go to someone else and they'll have their opinion on how they can make it better. And both ways will probably work.
In order for someone to understand that, they have to be comfortable with the idea that everything anyone's ever told me has just been their opinion on something.
Yeah.
And that can be an uncomfortable thing to think about if you built your life upon a foundation of thinking that certain stuff was true.
Yeah. I mean, think about science and medicine. I mean, it just changes all the time. Like, it changes.